Hey folks, Mark Ryan here, and yes, this is a bit of a different live stream than you're probably used to. This is not going to be a review, this is not going to be an unboxing. This is going to be the first of essentially, I don't know, kind of like a new series of live streams that I'm interested in trialing. I'm calling them pink noise sessions. It might just be nonsense. This is going to be even less scripted than my typical live streams, more relaxed, more chill, and maybe more downtime, more like a typical live stream. Maybe, we'll see. But for this first episode, this first occurrence of Pink Noise Sessions, I actually want to do something a little bit special. So, you can't see him right now, but on the line, I've got my good buddy, Sean D'Entremont, from Dent Reviews. Actually, I should have linked. I didn't do that yet. I'll link to his YouTube channel in the description after this. But he is a fellow YouTuber. He does reviews of IEMs. But I actually ran into him because he was, I think you reached out to me maybe about a Sony Walkman review or something like that. But anyway, we've developed a relationship, a friendship, and over the past year plus, we've been like sending IEMs back and forth to each other. And we've been doing this thing with the most recent batches where he does like a blind listening test. So what I'll do is I'll send him multiple IEMs, and by the time they get to him, he usually forgets about what they are. And then he unboxes them and literally like blindfolds himself to listen to them. And I wanted to do that live here on the stream. So we'll go to him in a bit, but just for another quick heads up, the other thing that's really cool about Sean is he's also a musician. He's not just a YouTuber, he's a musician. And in fact, the music that you're listening to right now on the stream, hopefully if everything's all set up correctly, and if it's not, that's my fault. But the music you're hearing right now is music that Sean made. This is his album. In fact, I do have that linked in the description down below. If you want to check out Sean on Bandcamp, you can find his latest piano album. What is it? Only one more. If only one more day. Thanks, Sean. He knows his album name better than I do, but I've definitely listened to it a lot. I actually helped him with it. But yeah, that album, check it out. It's available in FLAC on Bandcamp if you want some good FLAC music. But otherwise, I think that's enough of me droning on. Let me pull in Sean to talk about what we're doing. So, Sean, we've done this before, multiple times.
We have.
I don't know. What can we say about this? This is not a formal interview or anything like that. But
yeah, I think we just kind of found it an interesting test because both of us are always trying to learn what it is about these IEMs that gives us the impression that they do. What's behind the sound, in other words. And I've always been a strong proponent of frequency response, and Mark has some views about just technicalities and different things. So I think found it kind of interesting. I thought, well, why not we do some blind testing? And we started to see if I could, listen to these earphones not knowing what they are and tell maybe what models they are, or at least something about the frequency response, or maybe even what kind of driver they are. And some of the results have been interesting.
Yeah. Well, so, there've been times where I'll send you, I don't know, like 5 to 8 different IEMs, and you'll go through them one at a time. You'll start listening to them, kind of describing what you're hearing, and you will start describing the frequency response that you're hearing, as well as the drivers that you think that you're hearing, right? Whether they're balanced armatures, dynamic drivers, or ESTs and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not those things are actually hearable or audible. Like, is BA timbre a thing, right?
Sure.
Some people are, that have heard a lot of stuff say, like, yeah, BA stuff sounds a certain way, but there's also a bit of a meme in that. Like, sometimes people hear what sounds like BA timbre, but there's no BA or whatever. I don't know. But you come away a lot of the times with pretty strong sense of what things are, and usually you're pretty right. Like, I'll be honest, like what you do with these blind listening tests, I've never done these with you, right? Like, it's always been you doing the blind listening and not me. And that's because I don't think I would do it as well as you do, to be honest.
Let's try it one time.
Yeah. We'll see about that. I'll embarrass myself. But so I guess maybe the setup for here too is that I sent you 2 IEMs earlier this week that you don't even know what they are. I haven't told you what they are. I think you have a
now blindfold with you.
Yeah, exactly. You have an idea. Like, I think you think you know what one of them is, but I don't.
I think I'm gonna guess that you sent me that. I'm gonna butcher this name.
Don't worry.
The lava. Because that's one I've been wanting to hear a lot, so I'm guessing one of them is that.
Okay.
But don't tell me.
Okay, I understand why you would think that. But yeah, I sent you 2 IEMs. I haven't told you what they are, and what Sean's gonna do is just listen to them and kind of do what he does. Folks that are in the live stream right now, I know like normally I do my live stream, I do my video front to back, and then we talk at the end. Because this is a more casual live stream, you have any questions about what's going on in real time, I'll try and respond to you. Because frankly, this stream might just be me sitting here watching Sean listen to IEMs, which is sometimes what it is, and that's okay.
If you have any questions too, just let me know if they have any, and I can always answer them.
Yeah, we'll do. I mentioned, so you were asking about watching the live stream, and I was saying it would be delayed, so it might not be that useful, but if you did want to check it out just for the live chat, you could at least follow the live chat. That's in real time.
Sure. Let me pull that up right on my computer here.
What's the best way to go to youtube.com/superreview. See what's going on in the chat right now. We got Juan. What's up? Juan asking me, isn't it almost bedtime? It's actually past my bedtime right now. It's 10:30 p.m. Usually I'm in bed by 9:30. I'm usually in bed by 10, and I'll probably fall asleep by about 10:30. But it's the weekend, so I'm being bad. Tom Wakelings, hey, hello Mark, how's it going, Tom? Say hello to Sean as well. Rob Hawk, how you doing? Always good seeing you there. Yes, this is a bonus stream. This Pink Noise Sessions. Rob, you're asking, is Sean a person of good character? I think so. I think Sean's, I don't know, I've sent him thousands of dollars of IEMs and they've all come back eventually. So I'm pretty confident he's a good guy. Let's see.
Background music's a little loud there, they said.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
It's rather loud. Interesting. So I've got it what I thought was turned down pretty low. Let me see what I can do about that.
Thanks for the comment. I appreciate that. He said he's glad it's actually loud.
Oh my god. Yeah, it is really loud. Because it reset. Oh my gosh, I freaking hate OBS. We're doing it live.
Yeah, we were just discussing that before. We both use OBS now and then, and it's kind of like a 1990s UI. High quality stuff.
That should be better. Or I just ruined everything. One or the other. But yeah, thanks, Juan. Where One Nation didn't expect this bonus stream. Piano is one of my favorite instruments. It sounds quite nice using my Blessing 2 Dusk right now.
Good IEM. Good IEM.
Yep. You had that at once, didn't you?
I did. I actually kind of regret getting rid of it. But as we'll discuss, I have opinions on driver types and frequency response and whatnot. And there was one little niggle about the Dusk that kind of bothered me, but overall that's a phenomenal frequency response, great bass. That's a good set.
Yeah. And Where One Nation commenting on that BA timbre, saying BA timbre is a bit of a meme though. I think cheaper BAs sound grainy to my ears. Okay, interesting. I will say I find the Moondrop Blessing 2 mid-range to sound BA-ish. So I mean, it's possible that I could be fooled by something like that, but that to me sounds like BA. But I actually
would like to say too, and I think you'd probably agree with me on this, but even though I personally believe that balanced armatures do have a different sound, a different quality to them, that doesn't mean they're bad, they're just different. So I think there's somebody that might prefer that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I prefer dynamic drivers usually over balanced armature, but I've heard some balanced armatures like the S8 that sound excellent. So it's kind of a personal taste.
Yeah. Although I haven't heard anyone who says that they prefer balanced armature bass.
That's true. But I would almost argue I have yet to find a balanced armature with an ideal bass frequency response. So maybe they just need to find a way to tune those multiple drivers to get that. The closest thing to it has probably been the, let's not go into that just yet.
Okay, all right.
But I haven't had any, hit that ideal frequency response for what I consider a really good sort of neutral bass response. Because they do come off sounding a little bit, I'd say, thinner or lighter in the bass for any given similar response with the dynamic driver, whereas those hit a little bit maybe firmer and with more impact. So to compensate for that, I think it would require a certain frequency response. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
So
fair enough. let's see, what are people saying? Saying that the music is inaudible. Rob Hawk, you're saying still frozen here. Are you saying it's frozen there because you're still watching Frozen from Disney, or something about the stream itself is frozen?
Let it go. I'm not gonna sing on this one though. Sorry.
You just did. It's live. It's out there on the internet. I told you guys he was a musician. Yeah, I guess if anyone has a comment on the background music now, is it too quiet, not there? I can't really tell.
Yeah, We Are One Nation said the U12T, which I have not heard that, but I've always been very curious to hear that because the response does look very good. So maybe one day.
It is very good bass. I gotta say, also, I have the Campfire Audio Andromeda, which is an all BA set.
Yep.
The BA or the bass curve on that is not like your ideal type of bass curve.
So the one that I remember, I'm just going to pull this up now because it's going to bug me. The one I remember thinking had a really good bass response was probably the ThieAudio Legacy 4. Was that all BA?
No, that had a dynamic driver for the bass.
Oh, never mind then. That's why. See, dynamic drivers are set.
There you go. All right, so I think that's enough exposition. I don't know how did you want to get into listening?
Sure.
Yeah, so again, just a reminder to folks, I sent Sean 2 different IEMs. He has taken them out of the box. I watched him take them out of the box here live while we were setting up. He has not seen them. He has not physically seen them with his eyeballs, so he actually doesn't know what they are.
That's why I look like Rambo. I unboxed them with this on.
That's actually worth explaining, is that Sean doesn't normally walk around looking like Rambo.
Although now I don't know, it's kind of cool.
At least not that I know of. Yeah, maybe
it matches my shirt.
A new look for Sean. Yeah. But yeah, that's actually a blindfold that he has prepared for this test. Blaz saying that it's too quiet because he likes the music. Well, you know what? For that, there's of course going to be a balance, but I am going to go ahead and, for the sake of promotion of Sean, I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. Hopefully it's not too loud. Oh my gosh, now it's way too loud. I can tell. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, that should be good. All right, folks. I apologize. We know what we're doing around here. We're One Nation saying, speaking of the U12T, has Mark heard the Tia Trio? Bro, I reviewed the Tia Trio. The bass in that is highly acclaimed. Yeah, very good bass. Lucker asking, hi, what is the test exactly? The test, honestly, that's a good question, Sean. What is this a test of? It's just fun, right?
Yeah, I basically go through a selection of music that I have kind of determined as test music, if you will, and I listen for certain things that I'm looking for to try to determine basically if I can tell the frequency response and the driver tech and just various aspects of the IEM to see if we can actually identify a lot of the things that Mark and I look at when we're reviewing earphones, like these specs and these technicalities. We're kind of just trying to see if there's maybe an objective way to isolate the subjective things we talk about, if that makes sense. Nope. So what I'll do though, as I go through these test songs that I've picked out, I'll tell you what I'm listening for and what music I have playing. You won't hear the music, but I'll tell you what songs, what selections there, and why I'm listening, like what I'm listening for, to try to see if I can, give you an idea of, what exactly I'm doing. And just so you know, I'm not blindfolded right now, but I have these, they're in this IEM case here, so I can't see them. I will put the blindfold on and take them out. And Mark will help me through fumbling like an idiot to make sure I'm wearing them and plugging them in and everything. But yeah, we can just kind of get right into it, and I can explain everything if you want to start, or...
let me think. Anything else worth explaining? Maybe just as a testament to how devoted you are to, actually maintaining the integrity of this blindfold test. Before this stream. So I sent Sean 2 different IEMs. One of them I sent him with a 4.4 millimeter cable. Sean doesn't have a 4.4 millimeter source, so we needed to swap cables. So he put on the blindfold, and I like described what he was doing as he was doing it. He did it blind, but I don't know. It's just to show you the extents to which Sean is ready to preserve the sanctity of this test. Not that it's that serious.
No.
But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and throw in the first set and pull up your first track.
Sure.
All right.
And just a preliminary explanation of what I'm using here. It's a Windows computer. I'm using software called Music Bee, and I use that with an ASIO driver going into my JDS element. So if you're not familiar with that, it's audio stream input output, I think is what it stands for. And that just basically means that it's sending the bit perfect data right to my interface, my DAC, and not using the Windows direct sound garbage that, if you're not familiar with Windows, direct sound is garbage. Whether you can hear it or not, it kind of can alter your sound a little bit. And that's the way to get around that. So it's basically as close as a perfect stream as you can get to your audio interface from Windows. So that's how I like to listen to music. So I'm going to pop in here, and I'm going to put this blindfold on here. And if you can see that, hopefully I'm as blind as a bat.
Yep, it's going to be funny watching you put these IEMs in your head.
All right,
first one here. You got your first set. Do you want to hold it up to the camera?
Sure.
Because I can't say out loud what it is, otherwise people will hear.
Don't tell me.
But you can show them. It's not very close to the camera. A little bit to your
blurry?
left, to your left, to your left.
Other way?
Nope. You're going the right direction. And then a little down. It's blurry. It's very blurry. Okay, folks. I will type it. I will type it out so that Sean can't hear.
Yeah, sorry, I had manual focus on.
No, that's cool. I know exactly which one it is. So.
Okay, so you're good?
Yep, don't look at the chat either, because I'm telling people what this is.
I'm looking right at the chat, can't you see?
Oh, man. You got the Google Glass blindfold.
So I'm going to plug this bad boy in somewhere over here. I think it's right here.
Juan's asking if we burned in the cable. I don't know if you've sufficiently burned in that cable before. Actually, yes, I do know, because you took that cable off of your Moondrop illumination, which, for context for folks, Sean's a big fan of the Moondrop illumination. I think it sucks.
I will be the first to admit it's definitely not perfect, but there's qualities to it that I do like.
You don't think anything's perfect, though. You're one of the hardest to please people I've run into in the audio space. So.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Is this cable gonna give away what the IEM is?
Is the cable gonna give away what the IEM is?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so I can take off the blindfold now that I have them on my ears?
Oh. Wait.
I just need to be able to see my music to play my music. So normally when we put them in my ears, I look at the screen.
Sense. Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's.
Because I can't see them.
Yeah.
And I won't intentionally look at the cable just in case it is identifiable.
They're in your ears.
Okay. And it might be a little bit hard to hear you. So
that's all right. That's all right. We'll just talk shit now.
Okay. So what I'm going to start with, again, I have my test music here. As you know, I'm a pianist. So I actually listen to piano music as one of my main tests because if you've ever heard a piano recorded properly, it captures the frequency response from the lowest to the highest frequency range. I mean, a good grand piano can hit well below 30 hertz up to, 20K or whatever. So it gives me a good idea of the extension on both ends. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm kind of using piano music that I'm very familiar with. And I have, not to get into too much of a history here, but I have experience with some studio monitors and some professional studios where I've listened to this music. So I kind of have an idea of what it sounds like on a, acoustically treated engineering room with fancy speakers and all this. And I kind of use that memory as a reference. I have some studio monitors myself in a somewhat treated room, which aren't perfect, but again, another good point of reference. So here I am, I'm playing a song by Jim Brickman. This is good music too if you want to listen to some piano music, off of an album called No Words. And the name of the song is Shaker Lakes, and it's just kind of a nice clean, simple piano recording. So I'm going to go ahead and listen to that real quick.
All right, real quick though, Sean. I just want to make sure that the chat is not. I just want to make sure that the chat is not visible on your screen that you're looking at right now.
I don't know if you can see this. It's all.
Okay, cool.
All right. I can show you.
No, we believe you. We believe you. Yeah, we're good. So yeah, go ahead and listen. I see some people are asking me some questions, so I'll talk with them. But hopefully you can jam. So I saw Where One Nation. You're asking how many IEMs has Sean heard. In terms of count of IEMs, I mean, I wouldn't know everything he's heard. I know when I first started talking with him, he was really a big fan of etymotic stuff, especially.
Okay, so I already have this is. Oh, sorry, were you talking?
Go ahead. No, go. Okay, go.
I mean, I guess I get impressions pretty fast usually when I listen to piano music. So my preliminary impression already is that it has a pretty good frequency response. And what I mean is that the bass, the mids, and the treble sound very balanced to me. If you go to my site or even Mark's site, my target is available on our sites to see the frequency response that I prefer. And just listening to this initial song, it sounds pretty close to that overall. I'll have to give it more time to kind of pinpoint, especially in the treble and the deep bass, but it sounds balanced. I'll say that. So I don't know. He usually sends me balanced IEMs because I'm into that kind of tonality in the first place, but I just wanted to say that right now it's pretty balanced.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like Sean just mentioned, his target response is on squig.link if you want to check it out. It's called the Dent target, right? DENT target.
I'm going to turn you up a little bit.
So you can get a sense for what kind of music he likes or what kind of sound signature he likes. But yeah, Where One, you were asking how many IEMs has he heard. I can just say as the IEMs that I've sent him over the past couple years or the past year and a half or so, I've probably sent him, I don't know, 30 or 40 different IEMs, and he's heard whatever he's heard outside of what I've sent him. So I've sent him a lot of stuff. Pretty much all my favorite stuff that I've heard over the past year and a half, I've sent his way eventually.
So another impression I have here, and tell me if I'm stepping over your voice here. I can't really hear you that much. The treble sounds very refined and high def. I'm trying to gauge. It sounds very good. I don't know the driver configuration, but I'd say it sounds very cohesive. Whatever it is sounds. I don't notice any obvious separation in driver points or anything. So the next song I'm going to go through, this is an oldie but a goodie, is Jim Croce, is I Got a Name. And what I listen to in this song is actually the mid bass frequencies between 100 hertz and 300 hertz. That's my detestable frequency range because it adds a lot of mud and kind of warmth to the sound, and it takes away from the bass clarity and impact if that is not in line with the lower bass. In other words, the 300, 100 to 300 range with the 20 to 100 range, if that is equal to or higher than that, it can kind of sound soft in the bass. I call it bloom myself. But if that has a nice slope downward, it kind of leaves that openness for that bass to hit with a nice tight impact. Well, this song doesn't have a lot of bass per se, but the bass guitar has incredible clarity and depth to it. And I listen to that a lot to see if the bass sounds masked or muddy at all. So I'm going to listen to that real quick.
Cool. Yeah, as Sean was describing, it is kind of interesting that that range in the bass is one of the most important, the most pivotal parts of the frequency response. You've probably noticed in my reviews, I have a preference target, but I'm also pretty open to a lot of different frequency responses. There are certain things like what Sean was describing in that bass region, that transition where the limits of my open-mindedness will be pushed.
Okay, so just listening to that, the bass is superb. It's not overly boosted at all. I mean, for my personal preference, it's not any kind of boost in the bass. It sounds at least neutral. Might be a little bit light, but I can't really tell yet until I go into some other songs here with some more deep bass. But what I did notice as a side effect to this song that I didn't expect is these sound incredibly wide, and they have very, very distinct instrument separation. The guitars and things in the side are incredibly easy to hear. They're not bright or harsh, but they're really, really precise. So I'm going to go to another song. Now, don't judge me. This is test music.
Taylor Swift?
What's that?
Oh, Justin Bieber, even worse.
Yeah, Justin Bieber, the song Take You. And what I'm listening to in this song is the sub bass when the music comes in is actually pretty firm and tight. And a good IEM can hit that with a lot of like kind of tight impact, like give you that good feeling of sub bass without sounding overly bassy. So this song is just good for that component. So I'm going to listen to that real quick.
It's listening to Justin Bieber right now, ladies and gentlemen.
That's good. Hold on. Okay, so far I really like the bass on these. These are good. It's really hard to judge how much quantity there is because, first of all, I'm not really comparing it to anything. But off the top of my head, I would say it's pretty neutral, maybe a little bit on the light side, but it's very linear. In other words, I can hear it hitting pretty low, and it does have that nice tactile sub bass, which I like a lot. I think Mark and I have talked about that before, but I don't mind a little bit extra sub bass, but it has to really be isolated low. Like it can't bleed into the upper bass at all. Like I'd say 40 to 50 hertz is the highest I'm acceptable with, but a little bit extra at the lowest frequency can kind of give the sense of weight and impact without really masking anything else. I don't think these have any of that boost personally, but they hit down that low very, very easily.
Okay.
So next, a song by Paul McCartney, Silly Love Songs. And what I listen to in this song is two things. In the intro to the song, there's a lot of metallic clanking instruments.
Okay.
And one of the things we might talk about later is the timbre of an IEM. And is a good test as to whether those sounds have a very realistic timbre. Do they sound like metal in a room being struck by an object rather than maybe sounding tizzy or plasticky or whatever? So this is a good test for that. And then when the bass comes in, Paul McCartney is an excellent bass player. It's a very tight and clean bass with very distinct notes. So I'm going to listen for that real quick.
Oh, Metal 571. Thanks for dropping in. Good to see you there, man. Spielziele DT 1990 IEM. Let's go. This is actually the DT 900 Pro X.
So what I'm hearing so far, once again, the bass is superb. I like the bass a lot. It's lean but deep and tight. The treble, I'm going to have to listen more to more examples here, but I feel like there might be just the slightest bit of unevenness really up high. There's some drums that stand out to me in this song that are kind of a kind of quality to them. If I had to guess, it would be in the 12 kilohertz region, somewhere around there. Maybe just a little bump or a peak. It's not at all objectionable, but it just doesn't sound perfectly linear to me by the slightest degree. It's not anything I would be upset with listening to a song, but because I'm critically listening for it, I think I hear that.
Okay.
So going off of that, what I would do next is I'm going to pick a song that's objectionable in that area and listen to it and see if it stands out more than normal. So the song I usually do for that is Fleetwood Mac Dreams from their Greatest Hits album, which is one of the best masters. And that has a very clean and good recording, but it is very kind of lean and bright in the drum cymbals and things like that. So that kind of stands out more. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, the track that Sean's listening to right now, again, he said it was Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. Very popular song, of course. But the high-frequency percussion in that is an aspect that I like to listen for in a lot of my IEM tests as well. Use the word timbre, kind of a dangerous word because nobody really knows what it means. But I think when you're listening to things like high-frequency percussion, the splash on cymbals and hi-hats and stuff like that, that's where it comes, I think, really pretty clear. It's like certain earphones you can hear that it's there, but it might not sound the way that doesn't have quite the weight and like the decay and the reality of a hi-hat when you versus when you listen to it on a set that does that area of the frequency response really well.
Let me know if I'm talking over you at all.
No, go for it.
So I listened to that, and I also jumped over to the song Sarah on the same album, because that also has a really nice kind of a light brushing drum thing going on. And I still do think there's a little bit unevenness up high. It's not at all bad, but for my taste, it's probably just the slightest bit uneven. But it sounds at the same time very spacious and open. So I think the overall treble response from, let's say, I'm just going to guess, 5 kilohertz to like 10 kilohertz is probably really, really good. It sounds smooth and sounds clean. But then up higher, it's just, I don't know if I might be getting just a little bit of resonance, because one thing that happens with a lot of earphones is, depending on the depth and the fit and this and whatever, you can get kind of a resonance peak, and that can range between 7 kilohertz up to 12 kilohertz. So I might be hearing just a little bit of that. I don't know. So I could possibly try different tips, and that might improve it. Are these the Moondrop tips, Mark?
No, I think that has got spin fits on it.
Okay, so we actually both really like the Moondrop, whatever they're called. What are they called?
Spring tips.
Spring tips. They have a really nice texture and a nice wide bore, and they're very comfortable, so they allow it to go in nice and deep, and that's my tip of choice. So, let me do a couple more last tests, and then we can switch to the other side if you want to.
Yeah, that sounds good. And also, just a quick shout out. We got a comment from Hyperlapse saying the piano background sounds really good. If in case you missed it up front, that music is by Sean here. His album I've got linked in the description of the video if you want to check it out. Available in FLAC, and sounds great.
You know, I just realized right now I've never actually used my own music as a test, but you think that would probably be ideal since I mixed and mastered it myself. But anyhow, if anyone has any music suggestions, by the way, I'd be curious too, because I am always listening for things that I'm familiar with certain songs, and I have a pretty wide variety of music. But if you have any other test songs that that you use because of a very particular character to it, that might be an interesting thing to, maybe we could list that later and revisit this video. But if you're familiar with the artist BT, Brian Tranzo, or BT as he's called.
The electronic artist?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I remember listening to him like 15, 20 years ago.
He's been out a long time. I have his albums from 2000 up until now.
Okay.
So he has a song on the album, These Hopeful Machines, which, if you haven't heard this song blew my mind the first time I heard it. It's called Suddenly. And the intro is like this 30, 45 second thing where it's just all these chaotic, highly dynamic, very precise sounding, he calls it, it's not really glitchy, I think he calls it stutter editing is what he calls it. So he just edits these things in this really wild way. And this song has a very, very good mastering where all these sounds kind of have a very heightened sense of dynamics. And on a good set, it can sound really cool because it drops out at one point to zero silence. And that effect when you have a nice, highly dynamic transient and then it drops out to nothing can sound really impressive on a nice pair of headphones. So I'm going to listen to that.
All right. I'll have to check that one out after the stream. Or I'll just start listening to it now.
Okay, before I even get to that, the first bass note of that was struck with incredible authority. So yeah, these can hit really low and deep.
Listening to BT. I think I first heard BT. Was there BT music in the game Frequency? It's like an old PlayStation music game, PlayStation 2. I feel like that had BT music in it, and that was my introduction to BT, but I could be making that up. Does anybody remember the PlayStation 2 game called Frequency? It was actually made by the guys that made Guitar Hero later. They started with a game called Frequency. Very similar game design-wise, but you're not playing it with a big plastic controller. Shiny Hair asking, what's the story behind Sean's Discord tag? I think we should ask him, because I actually don't know. I feel like I've asked him, who's Lewis, before, and he jokingly said, that's me. And I was like, okay. And then we just left it at that. Go.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're always good. You're always good.
Okay, cool. I have to say that is probably in the top 3 I've ever heard that sound, like quality-wise. These absolutely dominated that intro. Bass was tight, super deep, no masking. Treble was very precise. Things were very spacious. I could hear every single instrument clearly. Lots of little transient attack. So that sounded really, really good, which reinforces my idea that these have a very good balance, because if the balance is off in that song, the bass can kind of overshadow some of the detail, and the transients might not sound as sharp, and et cetera, et cetera. So that passed that test with like flying colors. Another one that BT has done, because he's one of my favorite in like dynamic transients, is a song called 1.618. It's off the album This Binary Universe, and at about the
That's a lot of math.
What's that?
It's a lot of math.
Yes, 1.618. At about the I don't know, it's like 2 minutes and 32 seconds. The sad thing is I know these things because I listen to these songs so many times for this purpose. But it starts this little guitar riff, and then after that there's a lot of these really bright kind of pinpoint drum things going on that are really cool and glitchy. So I'm going to test that real quick for the dynamic and the transient response.
All right. Hey, what's up, Drew? See you there in the chat. How you doing, man? What time is it over there? I guess it's coming around the morning, huh? And where when asking, is that a Wipeout clone? I think referring to Frequency. So Frequency, the game, looks kind of like Wipeout, but it's not a racing game. There's no cars, there's no crafts or anything. It kind of looks like a Wipeout like course, but it's more like you're playing Guitar Hero, where you're moving. You don't do that in Guitar Hero. You're basically timing button presses with notes that are incoming, rather than trying to navigate a course.
Okay. Once again, that sounds amazing. I'm actually questioning my comment earlier about the peak in the treble, because I did not hear it there at all. That sounded really good. But with any kind of song that you listen to, it's mastered and mixed in a way that it might not exasperate that frequency range as much. But that sounded really, really good. So the next thing I would normally listen to, I keep going on and on here, but tell me if you want me to switch to the other set. But
no,
I'm enjoying this set so far a lot.
Yeah.
A couple other like key songs I use. Bonnie Raitt has an album called Luck of the Draw, and I think this album is kind of renowned for being one of the best audiophile albums. It's got really good mixing and mastering. It's dynamic. It's very clean, and they use some awesome microphones and captured some great recordings. I listened to 3 songs specifically on that album. I Can't Make You Love Me, which most people might know that song, but it has really nice drum brushes and a really clean recording. But her voice can actually be kind of harsh if your frequency response isn't really good, because it has a lot of energy in a certain part of the treble, which is still really well recorded, but certain earphones can kind of push that into a little bit of almost a sibilant range. Mm-hmm. And then Not the Only One is a track that has a lot of really good, it's a real drum recording, and they're very dynamic, and the drums have a kind of a poppy quality to them. And then All at Once is a keyboard, primarily like a dominant keyboard recording with her vocal, and the keyboard is a thick and really full-bodied keyboard. So hearing all the frequencies and how they play together. So I'm going to listen to the drums on I Can't Make You Love Me real quick.
Sounds almost like threatening. I can't make you love me. Like, were you trying to make me love you? Wow. Okay. Juan, I see you're recommending some albums. Hoseki no Kuni OST. I don't know what that is. Shinaringo Apple of the Universe, or yeah, I also don't know what that is. But I'll check those out afterward. You should link me. Hyperlapse, Yo Kamiyama Music. What's that?
Well, I've already gone through those songs pretty fast. There's just a couple seconds of each one I need to hear, really, because the intros have all that content in them. So in the I Can't Make You Love Me song, I actually do feel like I'm hearing that peak in the treble again. Very slight, but it does sound very natural, and the brushes are very clear. I don't hear anything objectionable. I'd say it sounds very good. Not the only one actually surprised me, because in the very beginning there's a small piano bit and also a cymbal, kind of like a cymbal brush slide thing. I don't even know what you call it. And they both sounded very, very natural in timbre, like transparent. They sounded like you're in the room with them. That was really cool. And then the last one with the keyboard there, the keyboard sounded nice and full without sounding bloated or, nasally or anything. So far it passed that album test really well. The only other thing, I'm very familiar with a couple albums that people probably have no idea who this is, but there's an album by a guy called David Gates. You might know him from the band Bread from the 70s. What's that?
Nope.
You might know him from such songs as Make It With You or Everything I Own, Guitar Man. If you don't know those songs, you should. They're awesome. But David Gates has his own albums that people know even less than Bread. And they're really, really good recordings from the 70s that have a lot of air and spaciousness because they were recorded on all analog equipment. And there is some noise in some of the recordings, but it's all very natural, just a byproduct of the tape reels back then. And his mixing is just he's one of my favorite mixing artists because he does a really good job with instrument placement. His drums and his instruments sound very natural and well balanced, and so I love him. So I'm going to listen to a song by David Gates. The first one is called Where Does the Loving Go? And I like this one because it's got a really good bass and some good acoustic guitar rhythms, and his voice is a really clear, centered vocal in the mix. So I'm going to start with that one real quick. Hi, Cat.
Sean's cat. Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, and there's also a string quartet. So it's a lot of interesting textures. And this is what he does really well, in my opinion. You have the bass, which is the low frequencies. And then you have the drums, which is also low and mid frequencies. You have the acoustic guitars, which are kind of the lower mid frequencies. Then you have the string quartet, which is a little bit upper mids, lower treble. Then you have the vocals, which is treble, and cymbals are high, and he kind of balances it out over the spectrum really, really well. I think my cat wants to say hi. Hi.
What's up, Sean's cat?
Blurry cat. Anyhow, so listening to that right away, it sounds very good. It sounds very, very open. One thing that I hear a lot with headphones in this song is that they can sound clear and bright, but not necessarily spacious.
Okay.
See, she sits on my chair. She's cute.
Nice.
And tell me if I'm getting too blabby here, but
no, you're good. As long as the cat's blindfolded.
She is.
Okay.
She's blind to what headphones are, so it's okay.
Okay.
So they can be clear and distinct, but not spacious. A good example of that is like the Etymotic, and Mark will tell you I absolutely love a lot of Etymotic earphones, especially the original ER4S and the more like reference tuned ones. But what they have that's their kind of downfall is they have this sound that's kind of like a flat wall in front of you, whereas some earphones can sound like you're listening in a 3D space. The Etymotics can sometimes sound like kind of a 2D space, and it's a hard thing to describe, but I think it's a combination of the stereo crosstalk, and if you're not familiar with that, we can talk about that, but and that can kind of take away a little bit of the spaciousness. And then it's also just something to do with their, driver tech or the way they fit in yours. I have no idea, but it's just a difference in sound. And these to me sound very spacious. I won't say they're holographic. I hate terms like that, but I feel like when I'm listening to the music, the guitars are sitting out here and the strings are filling out the middle and the bass is down here and everything sounds like it's in a space of its own. So it sounds very high quality and very good in that regard. So they passed that test. The last test I'm going to do, just because I want to go to the other set here, not to keep you guys all night, is I listen for... Actually thinking there's a couple songs that I use. I'll use Don't Laugh, but Beauty and the Beast by Alan Menken. The credits theme to that song, with what's her face, Celine Dion. A lot of those Disney's credit songs were actually really, really good recordings. And this song has a DX7, which is my favorite 70s, 80s keyboard. Sorry. And it's got a very, very pristine recording with dead black background, no hiss, super smooth because it's all digital instruments. So I listened to this song to kind of hear how incredibly silky, smooth, and dark background a headphone can have, or earphone. So I'm going to go to that now and see how that sounds.
All right.
Find it. Beauty and the Beast.
Juan and Hyperlapse, thanks for sending the links on Discord. I'll check those out after the stream. I guess I should tell Sean that everyone likes his cat.
Wait, what's that?
I was saying everyone likes your cat.
She's a good cat. She really is.
I also saw some discussion about Darude's Sandstorm, where One Nation saying, isn't that a meme from 2015? Bro, I'm pretty sure that's way older than 2015.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have no noise to hear the blackness of the background. I should just mute you, but that's okay. Hold on a second.
Recode saying, did you notice Mark's camera is off on the Discord? I see my camera over there. It's this camera. This is where Sean's at. You guys are up here.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap that up and say that I've had enough listening to kind of gauge what I think about these.
All right.
Do you want impressions? Or you want me to wait and do the second set?
Do you have any strong feelings about what the driver config might be?
I'm still hesitant to say the treble has a peak. I don't know if it's a peak or if that might actually be the driver tech. Because what I've heard myself, this is just my opinion, and I'm probably full of crap, but I feel like dynamic drivers tend to have less smooth treble. Up high, like let's say past 9 kilohertz. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but it just seems like it's hard for them to do that for some reason. Balanced armature seems like there's a handful that can do that, but it has a different quality to it. And then so far, the few sets I've heard, I feel like EST has the best 10 kilohertz plus response in terms of it being clear and bright without ever having any kind of peaky quality to it. So going on that, I don't think these are EST. I don't know, but I would say they're probably not. But then again, they're also they sound very extended to me. In other words, I feel like I can hear up to the 15, 16 kilohertz on these earphones. I hate saying stuff like this because I don't want to sound snotty, and I think Mark will back me up on this, but I don't mean to like boast or anything, but I can hear pretty easily up to 17 kilohertz. I've had my hearing tested, and I can actually hear up to 18 kilohertz or so. So I have very good hearing. I haven't had any real hearing loss. So I can pretty easily tell if an earphone can go that high. And I feel like these can go, if I had to guess, at least to 15 kilohertz relatively easily. That's pretty abnormal with a dynamic driver. So I don't think the treble's dynamic just because of that alone. Okay. So I guess this is at least a hybrid, if not a tribrid. I'm 100% certain, and I'm going to really embarrass myself if I'm wrong, that the bass is dynamic, because I just don't think another driver can hit the bass the way these do. I don't think it's possible, at least not from what I've heard so far. So I'm going to go dynamic driver bass and not dynamic driver treble, but that's about as good as I can get. Okay. I don't want to make any real guesses yet.
It's only your reputation on the line. Don't worry.
What's that? It's only my reputation?
It's only your reputation. No.
If I had to say right now...
Yeah.
I'd probably say dynamic, balanced armature, and maybe an EST. Okay. But I'm pretty sure there's a balanced armature and a dynamic in there. And I say that because in the mid-treble, it has a really good response, but it does have that sort of bounced armature gloss to it, or I mean, it's a hard thing to talk about because I don't know what it is that I'm hearing, but I hear it. So I would guess dynamic bounced armature and maybe an EST. That's my final answer.
All right.
And I'm gonna take my let me
you put your blindfold on, bro.
in here. Okay.
Yeah, so for folks who may not have been here earlier, what Sean's doing is I sent him 2 different IEMs. He doesn't know what they are. He's listening to them blind. He's taking off the blindfold once they're in his ears, because that's fine. But he's kind of just describing them as he perceives them. All right, this is where everything goes downhill. Sean falls down. Cat dances over his dead body.
Okay.
So you're pulling out the second set of IEMs, and again, Sean has no idea what these IEMs are. I will say in the chat, but again, do not you don't have chat up, right?
Nope, it's all. I can show you my monitor in a second. Let's see.
No, I believe you. That's fine. That's fine.
Uh-oh, I got a tangle. Okay, I think I got it. Maybe. I think so. Okay, that feels like the wrong ears based on the curvature. Okay, so I'm gonna do this.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, my brain. Okay. I'm gonna put these bad boys in here. Let me go back to my test playlist. And I'm just gonna, because I just did that, I usually start over with the same songs that I picked on the last one, just to kind of give it a comparative back and forth between the two. That'll let me hear the differences, which will not only let me hear the differences between sets, but it'll sometimes make me realize, oh, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was, because maybe the bass in this one is clearly more dynamic, and I'll say, okay, maybe that, you know what I mean? So I usually just pick the same song. So I'm going to go back, and if I can remember them all, start over here. So I'm going to go back to that BT song first. Another song, this is one I didn't listen to before, but off the album A Song Across Wires. That song does have a little bit of dynamic compression to like the whole album. I think he used it primarily as a mastering decision to kind of even everything out. But even despite that, it has a pretty good level of kind of like precise transient stuff going on, and it has a lot of really good deep bass. And Tomahawk is a song that has a really good sub bass. And if you actually start from the song before it, it kind of flows into that song, and then the bass drops. And on a really good set, the bass sounds deep and rumbly, but also you can clearly hear the notes. I've literally heard earphones that are, pretty high quality earphones where you can't even really distinguish the notes because it's just too low of an isolated bass. So I like to use that song too sometimes. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the other one, these hopeful machines, and listen to that first Suddenly song.
All right. Hey, what's up, Precog Vision? Precog's in the chat. Thick vinyl, that's a funny comment, but that's not nice. Recode saying, I want to follow this guy. He's got good hearing. He does. Yeah, check out his he's on YouTube. I don't know why I didn't link him. I want to do it right now on live. Let me do it live while he's listening. This will be awkward.
MU Mark.
What?
So he clearly sent me 2 very neutral response earphones, because these also sound really good. I'm not even going to formulate an opinion yet. Let me just keep going through the songs here. I'm going to go back to the BT 1.61, whatever it is. 1. Something? BT. Thank you, Music B, for searching poorly. To all music. BT 1.618. Yep. Here we go. Listen to that BT sound for the transients. Also, as I'm listening to this, one thing that is a dead giveaway usually for driver tech for me is treble transient response. And what I mean by transient response is when you're listening to something like a drum cymbal, or something especially that's repetitive and fast, so like a tet kind of response. The difference between it being dead silent and having a peak loudness is that transient. So when I hear like a da space, there's a quality to that it just sounds proper and realistic. And sometimes I feel like balanced armatures don't capture that. They come off sounding like they're fast. In other words, you hear precision, but you don't hear transient as much. So they sort of lack an impact of that note. So for me personally, that's normally kind of a giveaway because you hear a little bit softer transient response, but also usually a heightened sense of resolution. Like they kind of have a high def sound while lacking like a physical quality. That's how I view it anyway. So I'm gonna listen to this here and see what I think.
Right on. And yeah, folks, I just dropped a link to Sean's YouTube channel, both in the description of the video, but also in the live chat. And Recode, you're welcome. I'm sure Sean would appreciate a follow and a subscribe. Kelvin Cam finally made it to a live cast, so I'm glad you can make it. This is definitely later than my normal live streams, although if you're watching now and you don't normally make it, this is maybe early for you. Guessing. Where are you at?
Show me.
No.
If I'm going too long, let me know. I don't know how long you want the stream to go, but
you're good. I got nowhere to be except for bed. Yeah, I can wait.
Well, the impression I got from that song and talking about the transients, I'd say this one's hard to tell. It doesn't sound balanced armature to me, but it also doesn't sound dynamic, which, as far as I can tell, would leave either planar or EST. So I'm not sure yet in terms of treble, but I would say that these are probably not dynamic driver because they don't sound as I don't say brittle. They don't have that like tactile quality as much in the high treble. But I don't think they're balanced armature. But let me just listen to a few more songs here. I'm going to listen to the Bonnie Raitt song with the transients and the drums on I Can't Make You Love Me Again. Oh, and also one thing I want to, this is not a sponsor in any way, but the JDS Labs Element is awesome for testing stuff because it's got a big fat volume knob that's incredibly gradual and precise. So I can dial in the exact volume I need incredibly quickly and easily, and I love that thing. So props to them for that.
The Element is a headphone amp for folks who may not know. It's actually one I don't need it, but I was kind of interested in it just because of that knob. The knob on the Element is pretty sick. Now, Kelvin, you're in Critical Land, Singapore. Right. Well, good morning. Good morning to you. Happy Sunday. It's still Saturday here. Robot Glock saying everything going planar nowadays. Yeah, the 14 millimeter planar technology, whatever that OEM driver was that came out almost a year ago now at this point. It is one of the most common drivers now at this point.
So these have a very nice lower treble. Going off of my target, if you were to look at the 1 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz region, these sound very good in that region to me. They sound very smooth, and I hear a lot of like guitars. And the reason I'm picking that region is I hear a lot of guitars in that Not the Only One by Bonnie Raitt that are kind of off in the sides, and they have a very nice mid-range to them. And the mid-range and the lower treble kind of overlap. So I think in that region, these are pretty neutral. They kind of hit my target really nicely. The overall balance is also very good, but that specifically just stood out to me. I'm going to jump over to the Fleetwood Mac and check out the treble on the songs I talked about earlier to hear how the treble peakiness is or isn't there.
VX Ace agrees the JDS Labs is so good. I do actually have, I want the Element, don't have it. I do have the JDS Atom, which, as far as I can tell, sounds fine, but I actually don't like it that much because it's so lightweight and plastic build that it's like impossible to change the volume without the thing sliding around. I guess I could glue it to my desk. Frankly, I do kind of have my other source material, not quite glued, but I use blue tack to kind of hold it in place.
Let's see. I'm gonna go to the Bieber song for the bass. Let's see if I can tell you what kind of driver the bass is.
He excuses this Bieber song in his library because it's just for testing the bass, but that doesn't explain the other 5 Bieber albums he has.
It's funny, the treble in this song makes me question my treble assessment. Let me go back to, let's see, what's a treble? Good treble song. David Grusin. Now I'm just going to songs that are specifically for things. So David Grusin has a song called, I can't remember the name of the song. Oh, it's not in this playlist. Go back to all music. Here we go. It's called, that's what it's called. It's on the album, that one, the stuff over there. Why am I not seeing it?
Very precise.
It's on the Mountain Dance. I guess I thought it was called something else, but it is the album Mountain Dance. It's called Rondo, If You Hold Out Your Hand. This has really good treble, spaciousness, transient response, clarity, with all the stuff at the kind of climactic part at the end, and it has a really nice, not bassy, but tight, high quality acoustic bass. So I'm going to listen to that real quick and see if I can pick out this treble and bass a little better.
Okay.
This is a song you have to crank because it has awesome, like, grooviness to it.
Awesome grooviness. Is there a button for that on the element? The awesome grooviness button. Hyperlapse saying you have the same initial thoughts on the Adams build quality. Yeah, I mean it's fine build quality. It's plastic, and like the shit stuff is basically the same price and feels a lot nicer in my opinion.
So I'm hearing a treble bump. I don't know if I'll call it a peak, but it's a bump. And it sounds to me like it's hard to place. Based on the tonality of the drums, I'd say it's probably between 5 and 10 kilohertz, somewhere in there. That's probably going to embarrass me because it's probably nowhere near that. But there's something somewhere I'm hearing that's just a little bit like almost nasally quality to it.
Okay.
What's that?
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know if that's actually there or not, but I'm going to say that and just spit that out. Let me go to an Eagle song.
Sean, real quick, Rob Hawk is asking, what was the first song that by BT that you were using?
The first one by BT that I just started with this headphone was Suddenly on These Hopeful Machines.
Okay, there you go.
It's a very cool album. I'm going to actually listen to the live version of Hotel California on Hell Freezes Over, because this has a really good open sound and a nice deep bass with the bongos. I'm going to listen to that real quick.
I know Hotel California is like a classic audiophile test track. I have, specifically the live version, I've never heard it on purpose because I hate that song so much. VXA saying you switched to the JDS after you got angry at shit for having no consistency in their case surface finishes, which is totally true. I've got a triple stack of shit over here. And they've all got varying, like they're not super well controlled for the finishes and like the positioning of the logos and stuff like that. They could definitely improve that. And you mentioned the scratchy pots. I don't know that any of mine are scratchy, but that would annoy me for sure.
Okay, I'm going to stick with that. I think it is in like, I'd say even closer. I'd say 5 to 9, 6 to 9 kilohertz somewhere is where I'm hearing that bump. So it could be me because that is an area where a lot of earphones have resonance peaks. And these are shallow fit, so it's a crapshoot. And some people are going to hear, some people aren't. But I would have to say is somewhere around 6 to 9 kilohertz is a little bump. It doesn't sound bad to me at all, but it just sounds like things take on a character that has kind of a nasal quality to it, like instead of a neutral quality. but the overall balance is very good. And I'm going to go out on a limb here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to say that immediately I'm pretty confident it's not balanced armature bass. I don't know if it's dynamic, though. It doesn't seem to hit as firm and tight as the last set, but I don't know if that's because of the response, because that could be the shape of the bass, or if it's because of the driver tech. But it still sounds overall that the balances between mids, treble, and bass are very good. So I'd say it's pretty neutral overall, but there is that slight treble lean in that range that I think keeps it from being strictly neutral in my book. But that could be something that a tip would change, or maybe someone else doesn't hear that way. So, am I embarrassing myself, Mark, or am I close to any of this stuff?
No, I mean you're good. You're good.
What other songs could we test that would test that nasal quality? Going through, I have like 1,200 CDs here in lossless that I sift through, and that's too many CDs because it makes it hard to think of things.
What about Break for Lovers?
Oh, what? How have I not listened to that yet? I want to put that on the other set too.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, Break for Lovers by Men I Trust is like a song that Mark showed me, and this immediately became one of my favorite songs of all time. Not only because I like the music, but sonically, it's just a really cool song with really cool sonic. It has that quality with the kind of high dynamic transient thing going on, and a nice tight bass, and her voice is just to die for. So I'm gonna listen to that.
Blah, you're saying yours had a scratchy pot too, not to mention miniature sun LEDs. Oh, they're like too bright. They actually make I bought a bunch of stickers for putting on top of LEDs. I don't put it on my shit stuff because it doesn't bother me in here. If I was in like my bedroom or something like that, it would definitely bother me.
Hey, can I do something, or would you consider this cheating?
What's that?
Can I bring up a parametric equalizer and play with the equalizer?
No, that's fine.
I wouldn't be seeing anything. I'm just me personally
Yeah.
kind of see if I'm focusing in the right areas here. So
Yeah, of
I have
course.
if anyone can see my monitor here, I use something called Equalizer APO. So you can actually come in here and you can create a basic point, a parametric filter. And what I do a lot of times when I'm EQing headphones or whatever, I create a peak in here. And what I'll do is I'll start with a general frequency like 7,000 hertz, and I'll make it boosted like maybe 5 decibels, and I'll make the Q factor somewhere in the lines of like 7 or 8. So it's not too fine that you're not going to be able to notice it, but it's not too fat that it's spreading out too much of the frequencies. And what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll sweep it back and forth, and it can just kind of help exaggerate and help you pinpoint where things are, because I want to hear where that peak that I'm hearing is, because there is a peak, and I'm going to find it right now.
That sounds like a way better way of doing it than what I do. I use like a tone generator and just sine sweep it, but it's painful and it's not within the context of music that I'm listening to. That's interesting. VXA is saying that blue-white LED, it's great after you put electrical tape on it. Yeah, what I have, I guess I have an LED on my Modi. But, well, doesn't bother me. Again, if it was in my bedroom, it would bother me. But this is a room I'm not in the dark.
Okay, so for me, what I'm actually doing here is I do it by listening, not by looking. So I'm snooping around and just listening for when that peakiness goes away. So what I did is I actually, in this case, I cut it by 11 decibels. That just sounded right to me in terms of being able to hear it. And I moved it up and down, and it's at 12 kilohertz roughly for me. And I would say, let's see, how much is it? It's really hard to gauge because it may not just be a single peak or bump, but it's like probably 4 or 5 decibels higher than I think it should be. And that's just a general rough like gauge. It might be completely off, but that just sounds to me like there's something more going on there, like a
Okay.
little more energy than there should be.
What were you hearing that made you like track that down?
Say that again.
What were you listening to? Or what were you hearing that made you track that
So
down?
in the drum track, see, I'm pretty familiar with the song on
Yeah.
everything I've ever listened to because I love the song and I listen to it a lot. But in the drums, the snare thing, I don't even know what it is. It's a fake drum, but it's like the kick drum goes like dun, and then there's a that sounds more like to me instead of like a that it should sound like. It should have a little bit more of like a wooden, papery sound to it, and it has more of a bright, raspy sound to it. So I'm actually just EQing it to kind of get rid of that and get it to what I think it should sound like. It's not a perfect science, and I'm possibly off, but it sounds like there's a little bit extra in that area to me. When I would do this, though, just so you're aware, I normally would take something that I have as a reference that I'm incredibly familiar with, whether it's my studio monitors or just another earphone that I know really intimately, and I would like quickly swap between them and then do this because, I think I know the song pretty well, and I think there's more energy up there, but I might listen to it on another set and say, oh, yeah, it's not as much as I thought, and you know what I mean? So it might be less of a difference. But when you're not comparing things, you'd be amazed at how well your brain can adapt to things.
Right.
In the 30-something years of audio engineering stuff that I've done, like your brain can easily listen to something long enough and like change your perception of it, which sucks because that makes it hard to really mix. And one thing that mixing engineers do when they're mixing music is they actually take a break and they go away and they come back later so that it's fresh. Because if you start getting into fine mixing and you've been sitting at it for hours, you're not making good decisions because you have no reference and you're just listening in a way that you're not going to notice that. Am I yelling? I feel like I'm yelling.
No, you're fine.
So that and another thing they do a lot of times, and this is, really professional mixing engineers, they'll take reference material that they know and love, songs that are considered really good to them, and they'll compare them to their mix to have a reference point. So I'm just saying that to kind of point out the point that like this is not an exact science, but just off the top of my head, I think I'm hearing extra energy up in the treble somewhere, and I think it's at the 12 kilohertz. I thought it was lower, and it still might be a little bit lower, but just EQing it right there, that seems to improve it a little bit, is cutting that 12 kilohertz. 12,500 to be exact.
Oh, wow.
But that's also something that if I were to sit here, and I won't do this tonight, and kind of spread that band further and narrow it further and add a second band, sometimes you actually find that frequencies in one area are affecting frequencies in another in a way you don't expect. For instance, there might not be a treble bump at all. There might be a treble dip below 12 kilohertz. So it gives you the impression that that 12 kilohertz is coming out of a slope, so that it sounds like a peak when it's actually not. It's just a dip below it. So there's all sorts of weird stuff that can go on, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
So I think so far the frequency issue that I hear is minor. It's not drastic. And one thing that I personally feel is when you get past, let's say 12, 13 kilohertz, I don't care if you have perfect golden ears, you don't really hear as much up there as you do below. It's just the nature of human hearing. So a peak at 16 kilohertz is not going to be anywhere near as bad as a peak at 7 kilohertz. If you have a 10 decibel peak at 7 kilohertz, you're going to be like, whoa, that sounds bad. At 16 kilohertz, you're probably going to notice it, but you're going to be like, oh, maybe it makes it a little raspy or something. So the good thing is I don't hear anything objectionable lower down. There might be some unevenness, but it's nothing that sounds piercing or anything like that. So let me go and play one more song here. I wanted to play...
Quick question, Sean.
Yes.
Are you a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yes.
Okay. Robot Glock was saying, I think the engineer who mixed every Red Hot Chili Peppers album never took a break. Horribly mixed records.
Well, if you want me to talk about their mixing and mastering, that's another discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like everything they did, but I do like a lot of their songs, and I think they're good songs, and they have good qualities to them, but I wouldn't classify them as, like, audiophile. Not that they're bad. I'm not at all criticizing their mixing or anything. It's good mixing, but it's not, I wouldn't, like, use that as a reference, studio audiophile album or anything like that. But it also depends on the song. Some of their songs sound better than others, so.
I do like their song "Under the Bridge." Is that the correct title
Under
of one
the
of their songs?
Bridge. I don't know if I know that by name.
Okay, well, that song's pretty good. The rest of their songs I don't like.
And the Chili Peppers I'm talking about is like 90s Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any new music. I haven't heard any of that. All right, so I'm gonna listen to a song, another Bread song, actually David Gates too, but it's called Guitar Man, and this has some very good, clean percussion.
Okay. Is it organic instruments or digital? Oh, he's listening. Thick vinyl saying Vlado Meller and Rick Rubin equals terrible sound. It's a bummer. Man, there's a lot of music I used to like listening to that now that I'm into this audio stuff, I just can't listen to anymore. Blind Guardian stuff. Man, they have such good songs, and the mastering is just... it might as well be mono. Maybe there's better versions out there, but the versions I have just don't sound good.
I'm gonna go back to what I said. I think I said this earlier, maybe not. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a little energy in that 7-8 kilohertz region. The problem I have with that region is I think I actually like more in that region than most people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're always saying that. You're always saying, you're always saying that. Oh, I wish I had a little bit more 7K. I'm like, no, less.
Well, like Etymotic is you know, they have really good tuning. I think it's probably one of my best overall targets in terms of how they shape their response, with maybe a little bit of a bass boost. But they never have the 7 kilohertz that makes me really happy. It always sounds a little recessed in my taste. And what that does specifically for me is that is really where I hear a lot of the room ambience. So if I was listening to a recording of a live jazz band in front of me and I wanted it to sound absolutely transparent, like they're sitting in front of me, that's the area that when you cut it, it ruins that effect for me completely. It takes away the ambience that you hear, the spaciousness. You can add upper treble to get air and to get like precise clarity, but that doesn't really give a sense of the room space, where that like 6 to 8 kilohertz, it does. But the problem is it can easily go over too far. It's like, it's a very, very sensitive range for me personally. And I think that my target for that is probably closer to, I hate to say Harman because I think Harman's overdone in what it does, but it's closer to the Harman in that region. They put more energy there. They just put too much energy there. Whereas Etymotic puts a little bit too little. So I'm kind of right between Etymotic and Harman in that area. Critical, I think, is perfect. His target and my target in the treble response is very close. I just differ with his target in the bass response. But if it hits that target perfectly, I'm pretty happy.
You have to clarify, too, quickly on Critical's target. The target that you're probably used to and referencing is his neutral target, but it's not his preference target.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Yeah. But I never really understood what he meant by that, because if it's his neutral target, is it what he thinks is neutral?
He likes neutral plus bass boost.
Correct.
So that's his neutral minus bass boost.
Let's see. I'm going to go back to one more David Gates song while I'm here.
Calvin Cam saying, I agree about RHCP mastering. Apparently there's better dynamic range from the vinyl transfers.
This is hard. Honestly, I feel like the bass on this is not balanced armature. I'm trying to think of one other really good bass test that would solidify that. That Take You is a pretty good one, but there's oh, I know. Easy. If you've ever heard the band Porcupine Tree,
I'm familiar with them, but I don't.
They are excellent. Steven Wilson is probably one of my all-time favorite engineers, actually, and he's in the band Porcupine Tree. He actually did an album with Alan Parsons, who's also one of the greatest engineers of all time, in my opinion. But he did a song called Russia on Ice. on the album Light Bulb Sun. And at about, if I'm remembering correctly, it's somewhere about like, I don't know, 10 minutes into the song, nothing crazy. He's got this sub bass thing that hits. It's like 9.5 minutes, I think. And it's just like super deep, and it can rumble a really nice set that has good low bass. So I'm going to play that real quick.
Okay. VXA saying there's a lot of misconception out there with the IEF neutral target. Yeah, I mean, I've seen other people kind of make similar comments. So like, oh, I thought Critical liked bass. Why doesn't his target have bass? And it's because I think most reviewers' targets are like, this is my listening preference. The IEF neutral target is, this is what sounds neutral to Critical, which is not necessarily his preference.
And to kind of hit on that a little bit, my target is based on my experience with studio monitors in the studio and what I think an IEM should sound like to match that. I'm not saying it does, because that's a whole conversation on its own, but like IEMs, headphones, and speakers all sound very different to me personally, and I don't think you're ever going to have an IEM sound like a speaker. I don't think it's probably just not possible. But perceptually, for it to kind of generally sound the same, that's kind of what my target aims to do, is to give the overall balance in a similar kind of tonal character, and to have the bass have a similar kind of feel. And I am probably a proponent of the you need more bass to compensate attitude, but not as much as like the Harman target. I think that's overly done, and not as high up. I think I personally believe that having extra low bass a little bit can give the sense of a firm, like speaker-like bass without muddying up any other frequencies. So that's kind of where my target goes. I do think that from everything, I'm just going to throw a number out there, but like 500 hertz and up, that can be pretty, I think you could argue that that can be pretty studio monitor-like, and I think Critical hits it. My target's similar to Critical's. I think even your target, Mark, is very similar. You might have a little less in that 7K region, but overall, we have a very similar shape, because I do think that the treble lends itself more to being perceived like a speaker than the bass would, if that makes sense. Because with the bass, what you're lacking is tactility. You may not think so, but you really do feel bass more than you might be aware of when you're listening on a speaker, because it's moving air and bass frequencies. I don't know if the bass, I'm getting probably too technical, but bass frequency, the wave of a very low bass frequency, like say 20 hertz, is a very large wave. I'm talking like large, like physically large. So for that to travel through a space like your earphone, it's really not going to have the same effect as a large wave traveling through a room and displacing air. So it's just not going to have the same perception. But with treble, they're very, very small, very, very fast waves. I think that lends itself to being a little bit more similar in headphone or earphone as it would be in a speaker. That's my take on it anyway.
The caveat there, yep. I'll say, is that with treble specifically, it's like that's where the individual anatomy of your ear and those differences are going to be a lot more exaggerated. There's basically more assumptions about that in the frequency response of an IEM versus a speaker. Like everyone's ears, a speaker plays a neutral tune, and everyone's ears are hearing it as if, you know, they're hearing the normal outside world, and the IEM frequency response has kind of got more assumptions about what your ear is going to be doing to it, especially like the outer ear, because the IEM is skipping that entirely.
Absolutely, and I can't overstate the fact that with shallow fit earphones, resonance peaks suck. I mean, there's just no consistent way to make an earphone shallow without worrying about how a person's going to perceive specifically that area between, I would say, 7 kilohertz and 11 kilohertz. Those seem to be where that kind of fluctuates. And for some people, if you hear a 5 decibel spike at 10 kilohertz, that's going to sound bad to you. I might stick that in my ears, and that earphone's normal response might be a little bit low at 7 kilohertz. So the resonance peak for me pushes that up a little. And maybe it's still too much, but it sounds better. So we hear two people hear that same earphone as drastically different in the treble. And that can break an earphone for somebody. Now, to go back to etymotic, one of the reasons a lot of people like their earphones is while they might be uncomfortable and they're very deep fitting, they get to a depth in the ear where it actually eliminates, I don't want to say all of it, but most of that acoustic difference between ears so that they sound more consistent. But the problem with that is you then have to deal with discomfort, and you also have to deal with the fact that you need to know that you're getting it to the right depth and the right amount of seal. And even that's not always easy. So I guess my point is it's not always black and white with earphones to know that you're hearing what someone else is hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
it's unfortunate, but true.
Yep.
I think I'm done.
Okay.
I think this dynamic bass, but I don't know. It could be
Okay.
planar. But what I do think is I think it's a hybrid.
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest because I'm not going to embarrass myself. Well, I probably will embarrass myself anyway, but I have no idea what the driver tech is for the treble. I think it's probably balanced armature, at least balanced armature. I don't feel like it's dynamic driver. So if I had to guess, I would say at a minimum it's a hybrid with dynamic and balanced armature. Listening to it compared to the other set makes me think the other set is probably EST because I don't get the same sense of extension on these as I do on those in terms of like that high up extension, which I think is pretty uncommon with balanced armatures. There's a few out there that kind of approach that level of high up sound, but I haven't heard a lot of them. So my guess would be the last set is a tribrid, dynamic, balanced armature, EST, and these are probably a hybrid with balanced armatures, maybe a couple of them, and a dynamic driver. And I'm just going to say that's my final answer.
All right. Okay, now maybe just kind of curious about just the preference stuff. Like, do you prefer one over the other?
I prefer the last set over this noticeably.
Okay.
I feel
How
like
come?
the bass on the last set is more firm, like more tactile. So when I listen to those BT songs, it's much more pleasurable to hear the impact of the bass. These don't sound bad, but they do sound ever so slightly less linear in the bass to me, and I don't know if that's the driver or if it's just the response, but they don't hit as firm and tactile as the other set. So I'd say the other set is better in that regard. And the reason I'm leaning towards balanced armature with these is because the treble does have a quality where it's not there's not as much texture to it. And from experience, balanced armatures can sound precise in high def like these do, because these sound very, very good. I'm not at all saying these have any lack of quality, but comparatively, the treble on these sounds smoother, and not in a good way like response smooth, but smoother in like a textural way. Like they lack a little bit of texture. So they're clear and they're precise and they're high def, but they're not textured. The other set sounded more textured to me. Excuse me, which is why I would say that they're probably balanced armature in the mids, but the EST in the high treble, because they have a little bit of that more airy texture to them. These have enough of a response accuracy that I feel like they're probably more than one balanced armature for the treble. I don't know if I want to get crazy enough to guess how many, but I think they're at least 2 balanced armatures and a dynamic driver, if I had to guess. Yeah, I don't know that they would need more than that. Maybe they did use more than that, but it sounds to me like the balance of response, the bass is pretty, it sounds to me separated from the mids and the treble. So I feel like that the reflex point where that changes in drivers is probably around 200, 150, 200 hertz, if I had to guess. It could be a little higher, but I feel like everything below that sounds pretty good in terms of its like feeling. And above that, it has that kind of smooth quality, which it is possible the whole thing is like a planar driver. I'm not as experienced with the planar driver, so I don't know, but it sounds like it could be. Planar bass is better than balanced armature bass from what I've heard, so it's possible that it's all planar, and I'm just not familiar enough with that driver tech yet, but I feel like my instinct is that there's a separation there between drivers, so I don't think it's planar, because I don't know of any planars that are multi-drivers. Are there any?
Are there multi-planar drivers?
Yeah, like is there a planar with like 3 planars in it?
Um, not
I'm
that
not
I
aware
know
of any
of.
if there are.
Not that I know of. The only like planar there are some planar hybrids, but
Okay.
I don't know of any like planar multi-planar drivers now.
So I guess my point is just that like if this were a planar, I don't think it has the cohesiveness of 20 hertz to 20K being perfectly seamless. I feel like there's division. It's
Hmm.
slight, but I feel like the bass can be differentiated from the upper half. Beyond that, I don't think I hear a differentiation. Like I don't hear like 2 treble drivers. I don't have any way to know how many there are, but I just feel like from a frequency response point,
Mm-hmm.
it's smooth enough that they probably have multiple ones kind of being tuned to give it that response. It reminds me a lot of the what's it remind me of? It reminds me of the Monarch, I think it is, where
Yeah.
the bass was like I could hear the bass, but the treble just had that obvious difference in tonality and texture and timbre, whatever you want to call it. So but it doesn't have the bass of the Monarch. The Monarch bass is too much. I didn't like that. I
The
think,
the the bass on the Monarch that we both heard the same one.
yeah,
I wonder if that is representative of other Monarchs because it was so dumb.
it was, and it just sounded like so obvious, but not just the quality of it. I mean, sorry, not just the quantity of it, but I also felt
Mm,
like it did sound
mm,
like here's the dynamic driver and here's the other
right,
ones. And I
right.
feel like this isn't that obvious. I don't
Mm,
think, and again, I don't want to sound snotty or anything, but I don't think most people would probably even hear it. It's very smooth. It's very like they have a very good tuning. It goes gradually into the mids. It's not at all like, oh, there's a response difference. I don't hear that. But I just feel like the texture and the timbre of that bass is different. So that makes me think there's more drivers there.
okay. All right.
And it reminds me a lot of the Monarch in the texture of the treble, which is why I think it might also be balanced armature. Because I think, at a minimum, I think the Monarch was. It's been so long since I heard it. I think it was a dynamic driver, a balanced armature,
That was a tribrid.
so it was an EST.
Yeah.
Okay, so this could be a tribrid then, because it does remind me a lot of that. Um, I'd laugh my ass off if it was the Monarch. Is there a Monarch 2?
There is a Monarch too. Yes.
Okay, that would be really funny if it was a Monarch 2, because it reminds me so much of that driver timbre, which I never really hear in other balanced armatures. There's like, I would say it's almost in the, Mark probably knows this, but my favorite region is the 3 kilohertz. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
love the automotive target. I cannot stand earphones that have a big dip there. It sounds warm and soft and relaxing, but it doesn't sound normal to me.
Mm,
Um, so when I first heard the Monarch, that's an area I actually really liked because for balanced armatures, that region doesn't really come across properly to me a lot of times. Automotive,
mm,
I don't know how they do it because the ER4S specifically, that one model,
mm-hmm.
could almost fool me into thinking it was a dynamic driver. All the other ones don't, but that one has something about it. I don't know what it is. Um, and I think it has to do with that lower treble just having a nice, cold, smooth quality to it. So the Monarch kind of captured that a little bit, and I feel like these do too. Um, so anyway, I should stop blabbing. I'm probably
Yeah.
embarrassing myself.
No, it's good. Um,
So
are you ready for the reveal? And Chiron's asking, "Am I falling asleep?" Yeah, a little bit, but that's okay. That's just because I'm up way past my bedtime. Uh, 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 um, but yeah. You want to do the reveal?
sure.
Okay. You ready? I don't. I'm curious if like you even look at him if you'll recognize him. Like I feel like you might recognize one of them. I think the one that's in your ear you wouldn't know what it is, but
I wouldn't.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Go for it.
Oh, you want me to look at them?
Yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
Oh, that sounds so weird.
That's right.
I have no idea what that is. It's
Yep, that's
pretty.
what I
Is
thought.
that wood? That's not wood, is it?
No, I'm not sure what the material is. It's some sort of like organic
Uh,
random pattern.
It's a ThieAudio.
Yeah.
It's not the
It's not
Monarch, is it?
it's not a Monarch, no.
Okay, that's funny.
That's the ThieAudio Elixir. It's a single dynamic driver.
Elix? Shut up. Are you serious?
Yeah. So
Wow.
I was kind of interested in, you were trying to pick out what the drivers were, but I was also trying to match what I hear to what you were describing. I don't know if this is necessarily what you're describing, but to me, that set sounds a little bit on the dark side. Like the treble's a little bit,
I'd say
a little reserved, and so as you were describing kind of like a smoothness from perhaps a BA, to me, I think what I hear there is that the treble is just a little bit pulled back from where I like it, and so if that treble was to my target, it would kind of add that little bit of sense of texture, etc., that I would recognize.
Just want steam, go away steam. So that's the one I was doing the EQ with, right?
Yes.
Okay, which is interesting because I would say that's actually a pretty impressive treble response for, you said single dynamic?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's usually where they fail, is the treble has peakiness. Although I thought I heard, was there anything in the 12K area?
There's a peak almost exactly at 12,500 where you.
Okay, so I could hear that. So that should have been a giveaway about the dynamic thing. Like I even said that the dynamic drivers have peaks up there, but it didn't sound as objectionable as like even the so, and don't hate me, Mark, but the Blessing 2 and the Blessing 2 Dust.
The stream is over. The stream is over before you slander the name of Blessing. Go ahead.
Well, I think the Blessing 2 is actually one of the most neutral balanced armatures with dynamic bass, whatever. I love the response to that, and I love the bass in that, and I love the overall sound, but there's something in the treble that sounds peaky to me, even though it's not really objectionably peaky, but it sounds that way. So I kind of expected, I don't know where I was going with that. I expected this to have that kind of dynamic driver peakiness quality, and it doesn't sound like that to me. Even though it has a 12 kilohertz peak that I identified, I still don't think it sounds very dynamic in the treble, which is a good thing because it sounded pretty smooth. So do you have that on your site? Can I pull up that graph? I'm really curious to see that. Yeah. Let's see.
For folks
Can't believe I'm going to competitor's graph system. Oh.
That's right. For folks who are following at home, he's on squig.link. The Elixir.
Elixir.
It's spelled ELIXIR.
Okay.
VXX is saying that they are made of a burl wood. That's in a resin.
Yeah. For anyone, I don't know if you can see this.
No, they can't.
They can't. But they are a really nice looking, wood panel on the side. So if you like that style, it's kind of cool. That's a really nice response. I mean, the only thing I would give it, and this is, if you look at the response on his site, especially if you pull up the dent review target, which I've updated since, and Mark hasn't updated it, saying.
This is pretty updated, bro.
Did you update the one that's the last night?
No, I didn't update it last night.
I tweaked my base response a little bit. Just minor, nothing major. But even still, if you compare the dent review's target and you look at the Elixir, and then you pick something like the, even like, I don't know, there's the Chew, maybe? I think as much as that is a cheaper earphone, you'll see the bass response is very similar. But what happens for me is when you push that past my target level, you need to make sure that it's a downward curve and not an upward curve. And that Elixir has a very slight upward curve, and it doesn't look like a lot, but to me that took away a little of that impact and quality that the other set had. So I would argue, and I'm going to make a huge guess here, but I think the other set will match my target better than this one in the bass.
Okay.
At least in the shape of it, because I feel like I can hear that shape, and that's what I call bass bloom. Now I don't say that that's a bloomy bass response. It's not at all. It's, we're talking small differences here, but comparatively, that's shaped like this, and the one I heard before, I feel like was shaped more curved the way my target goes. So, what's the other one?
I don't know if this is a fair description, but we're both photographers. It's like almost, to me, it's almost like the difference of a picture being like perfectly in focus versus being like just slightly out of focus, like that bass bloom that you're talking about. Like you're not describing like it's bleeding into the mids and like smearing into the mid range or anything like that. It's just that it kind of takes away from the sharpness of that definition. Correct.
And again, just to stress, like two people could hear the, assuming the treble was equivalent, two
Mhm.
people could hear these two bass responses and think, I mean, those are basically the same thing. They're not drastically different. But when you start to really listen, especially on certain material, you notice a bass character that kind of bloomy shape kind of masks a little bit, especially on things that are really deep sub bass, because instead of having that sub bass impact, you have that sub bass and it's kind of overshadowed by that bass above it, so it doesn't have that tight hit that I like to hear, and that's the last set had that. So the last set had really good bass. The treble wasn't far off in terms of response, but I don't think the last one had that 12 kilohertz peak at all. I think that was more noticeable on this set. But I feel like the last set had more treble, I'd say. Like the overall upper treble is more just a little bit. Like this, like you said, it's almost a little lower than my target, which, and we talked about this a little bit too, is almost deceiving because the 12 kilohertz peak gives you that sense of maybe brightness or sharpness, but it's not really. It's almost like a fake brightness, whereas when you tone that back down to where it should be, the overall treble does take on that smooth quality, which I guess I described it as smooth and you described it as dark. I don't consider these dark, that they don't sound like they're muffled in any way, but the smoothness, I do think, looking at the graph now, is probably because the average of that treble is below what I would consider a neutral response, and that would come across as maybe a little dark or maybe overly smooth. But I did think that they sounded very resolving, very smooth, very high quality, so I don't even want to know what these cost, because that has been, Moondrop has just destroyed all pricing comparisons, but I would guess that these are a couple $100 at least.
Yeah, I think it's actually I have the prices up here on squig.link. I think it's like $200.
Okay. So I would say that's absolutely worth it if you like dynamic drivers with that kind of response. That seems like it's a pretty good price, honestly, because that puts it in the ballpark of the Kato, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's
And,
very similar in price range to the Kato.
That's probably what us Americans call it. It reminds me a lot of that Kato.
Kato.
But just it does sound, it sounds darker to me than the Kato, I think. Kato. Yeah, comparatively, it has a lot less energy at the 3 to 10 kilohertz, which would make it sound darker. Although it has a slightly better bass response than the Kato, I think.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I feel like the bass on the Kato sounds better to me. But this goes back to what I was kind of talking about with the response in the treble. That treble can give that sense of transient attack, which can tie in with the bass. Because if you hear a bass guitar, it's not just bass frequencies. You hear bass in the strings, in the mids, and when you have that attack that goes along with the bass, it can give you the perception that the bass is tighter. So I'm assuming that's what I'm hearing on the Kato, is that together as a cohesive thing, the bass comes across as being a little bit better. Again, not to say that the Elixir is bad at all, but I'm very familiar with the Kato, and I think I'd prefer the Kato over the Elixir, personally. And a lot of that is just the treble response in general just sounds a little bit better to me. But the first set gave a Kato a run for its money.
Oh, interesting. So for folks that don't know, like you've been listening to that the Kato for I don't know what the past
months,
almost year.
Yeah.
We're coming up on almost a year. Yeah. So you've been listening to that for a while, and that has been for you like.
That's my daily driver. That's what I listen to. So just so everyone's aware, the Kato has probably been what I've considered overall the best IEM I've heard. And that's a huge statement because there's a lot of factors and it is not perfect, but it pleases me without doing anything objectionable. It hits good, nice, deep bass. It has nice, clean treble, has a dynamic quality. So just overall, it's my favorite and sounds neutral enough that I would say it's probably one of the best I've heard. I use the Illumination as my computer IEM because it's open back in a sense, like an open back headphone, so I can hear things and still listen to it. And after getting used to the Kato, going to the Illumination has a smoother, more silky quality to it, but it does not have the treble openness of the Kato. And it also has a little bit more mid bass, which skews it from neutral for me, but I still love that. It's a very high quality sounding earphone. Then I got the Chew, and I think I blew Mark's mind, but I actually think overall, I prefer the Chew over the Kato, and I'm probably destroying my reputation by saying that, and everyone's going to say, I'm not watching his reviews. But the Chew maintains most of what I like about the Kato, but it doesn't have as much bass. And I think the Kato has too much bass and a little bit too much mid bass, the 100 to 300 hertz specifically, which, although it sounds superb, from a critical standpoint, it is masking a little bit of that lower bass. The Chew still has a similar shape, but the bass is a little bit more neutral in its amount, and I like that because the overall sound is more open and bright without really sounding harsh. The niggle that I have with the Chew, and I think Mark would agree with this, is there's a very small area in the treble that just sounds a little bit maybe unnatural. I don't know what would you call that?
It's been a while since I even listened to it, but I probably used a word like jangly.
Jangly, yeah. And it's very slight to the point where if I'm
Shimmery.
listening to it regularly and not comparing it, I don't really think about it. But if I put it side by side with the Kato has better treble. I mean, it sounds refined compared to the Chew. But it also has that warmer, thicker, different tonality where I prefer the Chew in overall balance. So Moondrop has been just knocking it out of the park, honestly. They blow my mind with what they come up with for the price.
Yeah, Recode's asking you specifically, what do you think about Chew versus Illumination?
I would actually take the Chew over the Illumination. What I like about the Illumination, Mark will completely disagree with me, but I think the Illumination is one of the most high-resolution IEMs I've heard, but not in its treble response. It reminds me of the Etymotic ER4S, and if you've ever heard the ER4S from Etymotic, it's a much higher impedance than the other ones. It's like, I don't even remember what it is, like 100 to 300 ohms or something like that, where most IEMs are like 16, 32 ohms. And while that shouldn't matter, I really do believe that has to do with its incredibly dark background, which gives it this really, really silky smoothness. You could give me any Etymotic I've ever heard, and if you blindfold me, I could easily tell you which one is the ER4S, even though they all measure incredibly similar. And it's because it sounds silky smooth. The Moondrop Illumination is the only other IEM I've ever heard that matches that in terms of smoothness. The only other thing that I could think that might attribute to that is that the Illumination has really low harmonic distortion. That's another topic for debate, but with low distortion and a good smooth response, that might be, why it's so smooth. The thing that I don't like about the Illumination is from just a tonal balance, it's not neutral like the Kato or even the Chew. It's got more mid-bass, and the treble rolls off a little bit sooner. So it has a little bit of a soft quality to the treble. I don't believe that it lacks any kind of clarity personally, but it doesn't have the energy up high that a lot of people like Mark, I think, prefers. Like, you have that kind of airy quality. It doesn't have that. It's more smoothed over. But where you can hear that response, it's just incredibly high resolution. The mids and the upper mids just have a really, really silky and high def sound to me. But listening next to the Chew, honestly, I think the Chew is not far behind in that area, but the response is just superior. I mean, I think the bass has a better curve. There's no mid-bass bloat. The treble's more extended, and you get a much more kind of studio tonal balance. And I prefer that. As Mark will tell you, the number one thing in my mind is the frequency response. If you gave me the most clean, highly technical IEM on the planet, but the frequency response was cute, I wouldn't really like it. I wouldn't want extra bass or lower treble. I want to hear that neutral frequency response first and foremost, and then those other attributes kind of can sway it one way or the other for me. So anyway, that's how I look at it. So I think the Chew is a no-brainer, considering the Illumination costs hundreds of times more than it. Although I don't think that means that the Illumination isn't for some people. It is kind of that open back style, and it does have a slightly different fit and feel, and some people might like the way it looks, but just critically speaking, for the price, it's like I couldn't justify it. I got my Illumination at a seriously discounted price. I did not pay retail for it, and I wouldn't pay retail for it. I just don't think it's worth $800. Especially next to the Chew and the Kato. Kato's only $180, so those are just no brainers.
Right. All right. Well, that's bringing us maybe to the first IEM you heard. We still haven't revealed this one to you.
I have a guess of what it is.
Yeah. What do you think it is?
I'm gonna guess it's, I don't even know how to say it, the Letshuoer Lava, because that's the one I requested to hear from you the most.
Yeah. Okay.
So it also fits the signature I heard, which was, I think I said it was a tribrid.
Mm-hmm.
I think the lava's a tribrid. I think. Um, and if I remember correctly, it did measure really well. Like it hit my target pretty good. So I'm gonna guess it's that. Am I close?
You're right.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Let's
It's
see.
the Letshuoer EJ07M kind of
Wait.
lava edition.
Oh,
You put it on your shelf.
I'm like, I lost a CFA. Ooh, wow. That's pretty.
This is your first time seeing it.
I didn't know they were red. I think I've seen the faceplate in a photo, but I just thought it was the plate, but the whole thing is red. That's actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
These would be so bad, but
Go for it.
If this was a Van Halen, are you familiar with the Van Halen logo? Oh, come on, Mark.
No,
It's got red and black.
Okay.
Well, it looks reminiscent of that,
Okay.
but a little bit more high contrast red and black. They should make a Van Halen edition. That would be pretty awesome.
All right. Well, I'll connect you. You can do that collab.
All right. The EJ07M. So, I'm going to listen to these more and get used to them.
Yep.
I think the only negative they would have would be, is the driver tech, the timbre, the texture, that kind of stuff, is it going to grow on me as being objectionable? Not in a bad way, but just comparatively. Or is that going to be surpassed by its awesome frequency response? Which I actually want to pull that up real quick, because I think the bass on that, as you probably thought as well, is probably one of the best you've ever heard. Is that true?
That is among my favorite basses in an IEM, yes.
Because I absolutely agree that has phenomenal bass. What's it called? Lava, I guess? Yeah, lava. Okay.
Yeah, it's
So,
the only lava in the database.
wow, that
So
treble response is better than I thought, actually. It's a little jangly, like up and down, but the average of it is very smooth, and none of the bumps or peaks are drastic.
Right.
So at any given point, it's only like, let me just use the inspect tool on his fancy graphing site. Yeah, it's only a few decibels up or down below that reference line. So it's not like you have 5 decibels or 10 decibel peaks or anything like that. I do think, and I'll have to listen to this over this next week or so, but I heard the same problem with the Zen. Was it the Zen Pro? I think it was. Let's see. Dunu Zen Pro. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it almost looks like identical in terms of it kind of goes down at 6 to 7 kilohertz, up at 8, down at 10, up at 11, down. So it has that same exact shape. And what I found with the Dunu Zen is I actually started to hear that as being not smooth. And it wasn't obvious, but there were just certain songs and certain tracks that made that treble seem less silky. I like the word silky because, it's just when you look at something that has like a smooth, silky appearance, and if you kind of wrinkle it up, it loses that smoothness. I found that the Dunu Zen Pro lacked that smoothness just a little bit, nothing major. Although the Lava does look better than the Zen Pro. It has a little bit less up and down, and it's a little bit more to my target. So I'm curious to give this more listen. It definitely looks promising.
Right on.
I don't want to know what that costs, though.
What would you guess based on hearing it? This is
Hard
the
to
fun
say.
for folks that are watching this. Like, this is kind of the fun thing about listening to IEMs with Sean, is that like you obviously have a very good ear, and you have a lot of experience hearing these things, but you are surprisingly you're not as into the daily grind of following everything that's new the same way that I am and a lot of people in the Discord server are. So you just saw the kind of lava for the first time in person. You're like, oh, it's red. I've been
I like it.
yeah, it's cool, but that just kind of I don't know, where was I going with that? What were you about to describe?
I was about to guess the price.
Oh, you were about to guess the price, right? So that's the other sort of thing, right? Is it I think most of the people that are probably watching this, that watch my channel or in the Discord server, pretty, the prices most people would probably know it, but you don't. And I think that makes this comparison especially interesting because you're doing it absent the knowledge of what that price is. But
Well, I have some impressions that I can base. It is tough though because I don't know, but like it's a tribred. Other than fake tribreds, sex bro, I don't really know any tribreds that are not hundreds of dollars. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess pretty confidently this is not less than $200. Um, and then if I start to think about it, if you went by sound alone, that doesn't always determine price either. Because I've heard some
Right.
$1,000 earphones that are garbage and some $30 earphones that are amazing.
Right.
So if I had to guess based on the company and the tech, I'm gonna guess it's in the $500 to $1,000 range. But where in that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It stinks because if I was to compare this to the Illumination, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
retail price for Illumination is $800, and I think this sounds a lot better than Illumination. I do. If I had to pick between those two, I'd pick this one hands down.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it's probably worth more than Illumination. But then I don't know if I'd say Illumination's worth $800.
Right. Right.
So, if I had to guess, I'd say $700.
Yeah, just about. I think it's like $670 is the
Really?
retail price. It's very
Okay.
often on sale, which is interesting. I don't know if this is like a strategy in Letshuoer's like marketing, but like they're very often will have almost $150 off the price on it. So pretty commonly I've seen it for around 550.
Well, I can say looking at the graph and my brief listening experience, it's one of the most neutral overall tonal bounces I've ever heard. Like just from bass to upper treble, it's almost flawless. That treble wiggles, I'll have to kind of give it time and see if that pans out to really be anything. But here's the problem. Most IEMs past 10K are garbage anyway. I mean, and as you know, you can't even measure that accurately. I mean,
Right.
that's a topic for another discussion maybe we'll have. But when you get past that 9 or 10K, measurement rigs, I would say they're not reliable. So let's just assume for the sake of argument that this is reliable. That's one of the best 10K plus responses I've ever seen. I mean, generally you're going to find a huge dip at 10 kilohertz. That's Moondrop has it. Even Dunu has some of them. It's just common, and that doesn't have that, and it doesn't have any major peaks. So even though it might be kind of up and down, that average response is really superb, and everywhere else hits my personal target really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I give that like 5 stars. That's
Right.
just response wise. So awesome.
Right on. Right on. Well, I think I'm about to pass out. So
I should go to bed too. I need to get up in like 5 hours.
yeah, it's what 12:20 p.m. or a.m. here, right? Past midnight here. You're like 2 hours ahead of me. So it's almost 2:30 there.
The things I do for Mark.
You should get to sleep. But yeah, this was fun. This is a lot of fun. I mean, always it's
Definitely.
fun doing the listening test, but it was also fun doing it in front of folks.
And I always appreciate Mark is super awesome guy, seriously. And I really also definitely appreciate the chance to hear these, Mark, because that is awesome. It's not every day you get to hear crazy earphones like this. So thank you, sir.
Of course. And again, one more shout out for Sean's music, which you have all been listening to as we did this live stream. Yeah, that's the dulcet tones of Sean's piano.
Now.
Is that your is that like a Nord what's the name? The Nord Grand piano or something?
Yes, it's a Nord Grand.
Okay.
Okay. In my opinion, it's the most realistic sampled. It's a sampled piano. So Nord Clavia is the company. They go in the studio and they record, every note at every velocity in every possible situation on this gorgeous grand piano in this gorgeous studio, and then they calibrate their key sets and keyboard action and everything to fit that. So you just end up with like the most playable, believable piano I've ever heard in a sampled piano. So awesome.
Yeah, check out Sean's album on Bandcamp, linked in the description down below. And if you liked this live stream, again, a little bit of a different thing for me, but this was a trial run, and I think it went pretty well. And Sean, thank you for being part of it. So
thanks everybody for watching.
Yep, folks, I'm going to sign off. Sean, you can hang around. We can catch up after, but I will sign off for everybody else, I think. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.